The descent into darkness. In the sprawling reaches of the galaxy, there existed a marketplace unlike any other, a dark bazaar known as the Gorant Slave Market. It pulsed with the raw energy of desperation and greed, drawing in those who sought power and those who had lost everything. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and metal, as the cries of the auctioneer echoed across the stalls, each voice a haunting reminder of the lives being bartered away like mere commodities. Captain Eric Voss, a seasoned smuggler, had always managed to steer clear of the darker dealings of the universe. He was known for his quick thinking and even quicker reflexes. Today, however, he found himself in the midst of this chaotic marketplace, not by choice but by necessity. His ship, the Nebula Runner, needed repairs, and Gorant was the only place where he could find the rare parts he required. As Eric navigated the crowded pathways, the vibrant yet oppressive atmosphere churned his stomach. The faces around him were a mix of despair and greed, but one figure caught his eye: a tall, alien woman standing on the auction block. Unlike the others who cowered and shrank under the weight of their chains, she stood defiant, her skin shimmering in a pale lavender hue. Long silken hair cascaded down her back, and her large, luminous eyes radiated an unspoken strength that was impossible to ignore. "Let's start the bidding at 75,000 credits for this rare find," the auctioneer shouted, his voice dripping with greed. Eric felt a pang of something. Was it empathy or something deeper? He watched as a brutish figure stepped forward, his cruel grin sending a shiver down Eric's spine. This man was a predator, and Eric knew he couldn't let his woman fall into such vile hands. Without fully realizing what he was doing, Eric's voice cut through the din of the crowd. 880,000 credits. The words surprised even him, but they carried a weight of urgency he couldn't deny. Gasps rippled through the audience, eyes turning to him in shock. The brutish man scowled, eyes narrowing as he contemplated his next move. 100,000, the man barked, his tone sharp with aggression. Eric felt the pressure build in the air. He was aware that he had crossed a line, but he refused to back down. 120,000 credits. He called out, determination lacing his voice. The auctioneer's gavel came down with a finality that silenced the crowd. Sold to the gentleman for 120,000 credits. Eric exhaled slowly, his heart racing. The brutish man shot him a murderous glare before storming away, muttering curses under his breath. As the handlers released the alien woman from her chains, Eric approached the auction block, his mind racing with a mixture of fear and hope. "Can you walk?" he asked, unsure of how to interact with her. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice soft but firm, filled with an air of confidence. There was something in her eyes that held Eric captive, something that made him feel he was standing at the precipice of a much larger story. "Good, let's get out of here." They made their way through the chaos of the market, heading towards the Nebula Runner, a ship that had seen its fair share of adventures. As they boarded the ship, Eric couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much more complicated than he had anticipated. The engines hummed softly, and as the ship powered up, he glanced back at the woman now sitting quietly in the passenger seat. She was free, technically, but he had a nagging feeling that this decision would alter the course of his life in ways he couldn't foresee. "You're free to go wherever you want," Eric said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I can drop you off at the next spaceport." The woman tilted her head, her expression contemplative. "I'm not sure that's the best idea," she replied, her voice calm yet laced with something more profound. "Why is that?" he probed, curiosity picking in his mind. "I'm not just any slave," she stated, her gaze unwavering. "My people, we're hunted." That word, hunted, struck a chord within Eric. Hunted. Why? She leaned forward slightly, her eyes glinting in the dim cockpit light. "Because of what I can do. Because of what we are." Eric's brow furrowed, confusion dancing across his features. He had expected this to be a simple rescue, a moral choice to save someone from a cruel fate. But it was becoming clear that this woman, with her striking features and undeniable strength, carried a weight far beyond her circumstances. "You have a name?" he asked, eager to learn more. "Call me V," she replied softly, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "V," he repeated, savoring the sound of it. "You're on my ship now. If there's something I need to know about what's after you, you better tell me before I get in deeper than I already am." Her expression softened, and for a moment, the walls between them seemed to dissolve. "You've already crossed the line, Captain. There's no going back." Eric sighed, running a hand through his hair. He knew she was right, but that didn't ease the weight on his shoulders. Whatever trouble VA brought with her was now his to handle, and for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he felt a strange desire to protect her. Days passed aboard the Nebula Runner, but the tension between Eric and V only grew stronger. It was as if an unspoken bond had formed between them, an understanding that neither dared to voice. Eric found himself watching her closely, fascinated by the mystery that surrounded her. One quiet evening, as the ship drifted through the vastness of space, V joined him in the cockpit. Eric stared out into the stars, his thoughts a whirlwind of uncertainty. "You're always thinking," she observed from behind him. "Someone has too," he replied, his eyes still locked on the infinite expanse. V stepped closer, her voice lower and more intimate. "You don't have to think so much, Eric. Sometimes you just need to feel." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Eric felt a magnetic pull toward her, something primal and undeniable. He turned to face her, and the intensity in her gaze sent his heart racing. This woman, who had been sold as a slave, was now more than just a victim. She was a force of nature, and he was drawn to her like a moth to a flame. "What are you really saying, V?" he asked, his voice low, edged with tension. "I've told you before, there's more to me than you realize," she replied, her voice a whisper. "But it's not just about me, Eric. It's about us." Her fingers brushed against his arm, sending a jolt of warmth through him. He took a step back, trying to regain his composure. "I'm not sure I understand what you're getting at." "You will," she said, her eyes never leaving his. "But first, you need to stop running from me, from yourself." Eric's mind raced, confusion battling against the undeniable connection they shared. He wasn't used to being vulnerable, especially with someone he barely knew, yet the force pulling them together was impossible to ignore. The nagging question that haunted him finally surfaced. "Why did I free you?" He murmured, more to himself than to her. "What is it about you that compelled me to act so recklessly?" V shook her head, her silver hair catching the soft light. "It's more than that, Eric. You feel it too, don't you?" He swallowed hard, the reality of their connection settling over him like a thick blanket. "What are you?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am what you've always suspected," she said, her expression earnest. "I am capable of far more than what you see. My people, we have abilities, gifts that most in the galaxy fear or desire to control. We can sense emotions, manipulate them if necessary. But it's not just that, we can bond deeply with others in ways that defy explanation." The weight of her confession hung in the air between them, and Eric realized that the adventure he had unknowingly embarked on was just beginning. With each revelation, the stakes grew higher, and he could feel the tides of fate shifting beneath their feet. What lay ahead would test not only their resilience, but also the very fabric of their connection, a bond forged in the crucible of chaos, under the ever-watchful gaze of the stars. Eric had saved V from a dark fate, but now he had to confront the darkness that loomed over them both. Shadows of the past. The Nebula Runner glided through the vast darkness of space, a tiny speck of defiance against the sprawling unknown. Inside, the air was thick with unspoken words and hidden truths. Eric Voss, still grappling with the gravity of his decision to rescue Vey, sat in the cockpit, his mind a swirl of questions and uncertainty. His gaze wandered to the stars outside, each one a distant reminder of the countless adventures he'd had and the many more that lay ahead. V sat quietly in the passenger seat, her violet eyes reflecting the soft glow of the controls. There was an aura about her that fascinated him, a mixture of grace and power that he couldn't quite comprehend. Eric sensed she was more than just a woman rescued from slavery. She was a mystery waiting to be unraveled. But with every glance, he felt a flicker of fear. What exactly had he gotten himself into? "Where are we headed now?" Vi asked, her voice breaking the silence, pulling Eric from his reverie. "I thought we could head to the nearest spaceport," he replied, trying to sound casual. "You know, drop you off and let you figure things out." But as the words left his mouth, he felt an undeniable tug of regret. Deep down, he didn't want to let her go. Vi turned to him, a knowing look in her eyes. "And what if I don't want to leave?" Eric's heart raced at her implication. "You mean you want to stay with me?" The idea felt foreign yet exhilarating, like a long-lost dream surfacing from the depths of his mind. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "There's something between us, Eric. You felt it, didn't you? Something deeper than mere chance." He swallowed hard, the weight of her words crashing down on him. "I did, but this is new territory for me. I'm a smuggler, not I don't know what to call this." He gestured between them, the air electric with unspoken tension. Vi leaned closer, her gaze penetrating. "This is an opportunity, Eric. You have a chance to change your path, to join me in a journey that goes beyond anything you've ever known." "But what about your people?" Eric countered, his voice laced with concern. "You said you were hunted. I can't just take you to some spaceport and leave you there, knowing someone could come after you." Vi's expression darkened, the light in her eyes dimming momentarily. "You're right. I can't go back to my home. My people are in danger, and if I return, it would put them at risk as well. But there are others out there, those who understand what we are, who can help." "Help," Eric repeated, curiosity mixing with caution. "What do you mean? Who?" She hesitated, her fingers drumming against the console. "There's a resistance forming. Those who wish to protect my people, who believe in our right to exist without fear. They've been watching me, and they can provide us with the tools to fight back." Eric considered her words, the enormity of the situation weighing heavily on him. He had always been a lone wolf, operating in the shadows of the galaxy, but now he was being drawn into a conflict far beyond his comprehension. "So, what's the plan?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt. "We need to reach their base," Vi replied, her voice gaining strength. "It's hidden, far from the eyes of those who hunt us. If we can get there, I can rally the others and we can devise a strategy." "Strategy for what? You mentioned abilities, gifts. What exactly are we up against?" Via looked out into the stars, her expression thoughtful. "There are those who wish to control my kind. They see our powers as a threat to their dominance. We have the ability to manipulate emotions, to bond with others. They want to use us as weapons, to turn us into tools for their own gain." A chill ran down Eric's spine as he processed her words. "So they want to capture you, to use your powers against others?" "Yes," Vi confirmed, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And not just me. They want to eradicate anyone who poses a threat to their power. If we don't stop them, my people will be wiped out." Eric's mind raced, the implications of her words swirling in a vortex of fear and determination. "So, what can we do?" he asked, his heart pounding in his chest. "We have to find the resistance. They can help us fight back. They have resources, information, allies. But time is not on our side, Eric. We have to move quickly." She leaned forward, her expression fierce, and he felt an undeniable resolve radiating from her. "If we're going to do this, we have to trust each other completely. No holding back." Eric met her gaze, the depth of her commitment stirring something within him, a mixture of fear and admiration. "Okay," he said slowly, "but you need to tell me everything. No more secrets. I can't protect you if I don't understand what I'm up against." Via nodded, her expression softening. "You're right. I'll tell you everything I can. But understand this. My people are different. We're more than what you see. We can form connections that go beyond mere words, and that bond can be powerful. Powerful how? Eric pressed, trying to grasp the extent of her abilities. If I connect with you, I can share my thoughts and feelings directly. You would understand my experiences, my pain, my hopes. It's a bond that transcends normal relationships. Isn't that dangerous? Eric asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. What if I can't handle it? It's a risk I'm willing to take, she replied, her eyes burning with conviction. We can become allies in a way most can't comprehend. If you trust me, we can become something greater together. Eric took a deep breath, weighing his options. He had never been one to rely on anyone, but something about V's sincerity made him reconsider. He could feel the gravity of their situation pulling him closer to her, the weight of their destinies intertwining in ways he hadn't anticipated. All right, he said finally, let's do it. But we do this together, as partners. No more secrets, no more half-truths. Agreed, V replied, a smile breaking through her earlier tension. But we have to be careful. If we're discovered, it could mean the end for us both. As they charted their course toward the Resistance's hidden base, Eric felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. This journey would not only test their resolve, but also reshape their understanding of what it meant to trust. He glanced at V, her expression filled with determination, and he knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The stars blurred outside the cockpit as the ship hurtled through the cosmos, each pulse of the engine echoing the heartbeat of their newfound alliance. This was just the beginning, a step into the unknown that would lead them to a destiny filled with danger, adventure, and perhaps even love. With each passing moment, Eric realized that he had found not just a mission, but a purpose, one that would challenge the very core of who he was. Little did they know that their journey would soon attract the attention of those who wished to keep the status quo intact, forces that would stop at nothing to ensure that their plan to liberate V's people would not come to fruition. The shadows of the past loomed large, and their pursuit would ignite a conflict that could reshape the galaxy itself. As they ventured deeper into the abyss of space, the stakes grew higher, and the line between friend and foe began to blur. The gathering storm. The Nebula Runner raced through the emptiness of space, its engines humming softly like a heartbeat in the dark. As they navigated through the vastness, Eric and V were enveloped by a sense of purpose. Each passing star was a reminder that they were venturing into the unknown, but now they did so with a shared goal. Are you sure about this? Eric asked, breaking the silence that had settled between them. The tension in the air was thick, charged with unspoken thoughts and emotions. I mean, you've put a lot of faith in this resistance. Via turned to him, her violet eyes shining with determination. I have to believe in them, Eric. They're the only hope we have left. My people have suffered for too long, and if we don't fight back now, we may lose everything. Her words struck a chord deep within him, echoing his own fears and desires. Eric nodded, his grip tightening on the control panel. All right then, let's find this base of yours. But if it's a trap... It's not, V interrupted, her voice firm. I wouldn't lead you into danger if I didn't believe in their cause. Trust me. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Eric took a deep breath, the weight of their situation settling over him like a heavy blanket. Trust was a fragile thing, especially for someone like him, who had spent years navigating the treacherous underbelly of the galaxy. But as he looked into V's eyes, he realized that this was not just about her. It was about them, about forging a bond that could withstand the coming storm. Days turned into nights aboard the ship as they traveled deeper into uncharted territories. With every passing moment, Eric found himself drawn to V, not just as an ally but as someone who challenged him in ways he hadn't anticipated. Her laughter echoed through the halls, her presence lit up the dark corners of his mind, dispelling doubts and fears that had lingered for far too long. He learned to appreciate her resilience, her intelligence, and the unique way she saw the universe. One evening, as they floated through the stillness of space, Eric found himself pondering their mission. "What's it like being hunted?" he asked, unable to keep the question bottled up any longer. "I mean, living in fear every day. It's hard to imagine." Vi paused, her expression contemplative. "It's exhausting. Every sound makes you jump. Every shadow could be your last. You learn to trust your instincts, but sometimes that isn't enough." She looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "I lost my family to those who hunt us. They didn't just take them, they took everything." Eric's heart ached at her words. He had lost people before, but nothing compared to the kind of grief she had endured. "I'm sorry, Vey. I can't imagine what that feels like." He hesitated, then added, "I won't let that happen to you again. Not while I'm here." Her gaze returned to him, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Eric. That means more to me than you know." As they drew closer to the Resistance's location, a new tension filled the air, both thrilling and unnerving. Vi spent her days preparing, reviewing strategies, and sharing tales of the others who would join them in the fight against their oppressors. Eric listened intently, soaking in every detail as he tried to envision what this resistance would look like, what kind of allies they might encounter. "Do you think they'll accept me?" Eric asked one evening, his voice low. "I'm just a smuggler with no real ties to your people. What if they see me as an outsider?" Via turned to him, her eyes glinting in the dim light of the cockpit. "They will see you as an ally. You freed me, Eric. You took a risk for a stranger. That kind of bravery is rare, especially in a world where fear reigns." His chest swelled with pride at her words, but a twinge of doubt lingered. "What if they don't trust me? What if they think I'm working for your captors?" "They won't if you stand with me," she assured him, her voice unwavering. "You'll have to prove yourself, but I know you can do it. You're resourceful and clever, and you've already shown that you care about my people. That counts for a lot." As the stars began to blur outside the cockpit, Eric felt a rush of excitement mixed with apprehension. What awaited them on the other side? Would they find allies ready to fight, or would they be met with suspicion and fear? Suddenly, the ship's control panel beeped, a series of lights flashing in a rhythm that sent adrenaline coursing through Eric's veins. "We're approaching the coordinates," he announced, adrenaline spiking. "Hold on." V's eyes widened with anticipation. "This is it. Get ready." As they neared the location, the darkness of space began to shift, revealing a small planet hidden within a nebula. Its surface was rugged and desolate, but nestled among the mountains was a series of makeshift structures, what appeared to be the base of the Resistance. "Is that it?" Eric asked, squinting at the view outside. "It looks different than I expected." Via nodded, her expression serious. "It's well hidden, which is good, but it also means they're wary of newcomers. We need to approach with caution." As they descended toward the planet, Eric's heart raced. He felt a mix of fear and hope surge within him. Would this be the moment they found the strength they needed to confront the forces that hunted V's people? They landed on a rocky outcropping, and Eric turned to Vey. "Are you ready?" She nodded, determination etched on her face. "More than ever." They stepped out of the ship, the air thick with tension and anticipation. The Resistance base came into full view, a cluster of tents and makeshift buildings surrounded by rocky cliffs. Eric could see figures moving in the distance, their silhouettes cast against the twilight sky. He felt the weight of their gazes upon him, a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. As they walked toward the base, Vi took the lead, her posture confident. Eric followed closely, trying to mirror her strength. The atmosphere was charged with the hum of activity, voices rising and falling as they approached. A group of individuals emerged from the shadows, their expressions wary but curious. They wore a patchwork of clothing, each piece a testament to their struggles. Eric could see the wariness in their eyes, the heaviness that came from years of fighting a losing battle. "Vi," one of them called, stepping forward. "You're back." "Zara," Vi exclaimed, a smile breaking through her serious demeanor. "I've brought someone who can help us." Zara's gaze flickered to Eric, her expression a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. A human? What does he know about our struggles? VA placed a hand on Eric's shoulder, grounding him in the moment. He's different. He rescued me from the Goran slave market. He's willing to fight with us. Fight? And what makes you think he can be trusted? Another voice chimed in, stepping forward. Eric's heart raced as he faced the scrutiny of their gazes. Because I trust him, V replied, her voice firm. He's already proven himself. We need allies, not just for me but for all of us. He can be a valuable asset in this fight. Silence fell over the group as they exchanged glances, weighing V's words. The tension in the air was palpable, and Eric could feel the scrutiny of their gazes. He took a deep breath, channeling his resolve. I may not know everything about your struggle, he said, his voice steady, but I know what it's like to fight against overwhelming odds. I've faced danger before, and I'm not afraid to stand with you. Zara raised an eyebrow, her expression thoughtful. We'll see about that. There's much at stake, and trust isn't easily given here. Eric nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. I know that, but I'm willing to earn it. As the group discussed their next steps, Eric felt a shift in the atmosphere. They were no longer strangers, but potential allies united by a common cause. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, but together, they could challenge the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. As night fell on the resistance base, Eric looked up at the stars, each one a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the power of hope. The journey ahead would not be easy, but he was ready to fight alongside V and the others for a future where they could stand free, unbound by fear. In that moment, he realized that he had found a new family among these warriors, a chance to reshape his destiny and perhaps find his place in a world that had once felt so far away. Shadows and light. The night deepened over the resistance base, and the air buzzed with a palpable energy as members gathered around a flickering fire. Eric sat cross-legged on the ground, surrounded by faces both wary and intrigued. V sat beside him, her presence a comforting anchor in the swirling sea of uncertainty. As the flames danced, casting flickering shadows on the rocky terrain, Eric realized he had stepped into a world that was as foreign as it was exhilarating. Zara stood up, addressing the group with a fierce determination in her voice. We have a lot to discuss, and time is not on our side. The Goran patrols have been increasing in this sector, and we cannot afford to be complacent. She glanced at Eric, her eyes assessing. But first, we need to know who our new ally is. What skills do you bring to this fight? Eric cleared his throat, feeling the weight of their scrutiny. I'm a smuggler. I spent years navigating the dark corners of the galaxy, making deals and staying one step ahead of trouble. He met Zora's gaze, trying to convey sincerity. I know how to get in and out without being noticed. I can help you gather supplies, scout enemy positions, and strategize. Zara considered him, then nodded slowly. We'll see if your skills translate into action. We need more than just words. We need results. V squeezed his hand, a silent show of support. He appreciated her presence. It bolstered his resolve. I'm ready to prove myself, he said, his voice steady. Whatever it takes. Good, Zara replied, turning back to the others. We'll have a briefing at first light. Rest up, everyone. We've got a long fight ahead. As the group began to disperse, Eric felt the tension in the air slowly dissipate. He turned to Vey, who wore a thoughtful expression. What's on your mind? He asked. I'm just thinking about the risks, she replied softly. This is only the beginning. The Goran are ruthless. If they find out about this base, they won't hesitate to attack. Eric nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. Then we need to be ready for whatever comes our way. We can't let fear hold us back. As the fire crackled and the stars glittered overhead, Eric and V found themselves sharing stories of their pasts, of struggles, losses, and hopes for the future. For Eric, it was refreshing to confide in someone who truly understood the weight of survival. V spoke of her home planet, a place of beauty marred by the scars of oppression. Her words painted vivid images in Eric's mind of lush landscapes and vibrant cultures now silenced under Goran control. "My people used to thrive," V said, her voice tinged with sorrow. "We had a rich history, a culture of unity. But everything changed when the Goran invaded. They saw us as a threat, something to be controlled. It's hard to reconcile the beauty of my past with the reality we face now." Eric felt a surge of empathy. "I get it. My past isn't much better. I've seen a lot of good people lose everything because of greed and power." He paused, his mind drifting to his own struggles. "I've had to make choices I'm not proud of, but every day I try to be better. For me, for them." Via looked at him, her eyes shimmering in the firelight. "You have a good heart, Eric. I see that. But remember, the road we're on will test us in ways we can't imagine. We must be prepared to face the darkness together." As the night deepened, Eric felt the weight of her words. He realized this wasn't just about fighting the Goran. It was about finding a purpose that transcended survival. They were forging a new path, one filled with uncertainty and hope, and he was committed to seeing it through. The first light of dawn broke over the horizon, casting a golden hue across the base. Eric awoke to the sound of movement outside, the air charged with anticipation. He quickly got dressed, joining the others as they gathered for the briefing. Zara stood at the center, flanked by a few of her trusted allies, all looking serious. "All right, everyone," Zara began, her voice cutting through the morning haze. "We have a mission today. Our scouts have reported a Goran supply ship scheduled to pass through the area. This could be our chance to strike and gather much-needed resources." Eric felt a surge of adrenaline at the thought of action. "How do we plan to approach it?" he asked, eager to contribute. Zara nodded, her gaze unwavering. "We'll split into two groups. One will create a distraction, drawing the Goran guards away from the ship, while the other," she pointed to Eric and V, "will slip in to gather supplies and intel." V met Eric's eyes, determination etched on her face. "We can do this," she said firmly. Eric nodded, his heart racing with excitement and fear. "Let's show them what we're made of." The group moved with purpose, gathering their gear and strategizing as they made their way to the designated ambush site. Eric's mind raced as they prepared. He knew the risks, but he also felt a sense of clarity. This was his moment to step into a role that mattered, a chance to be part of something greater than himself. They arrived at the chosen location, a rocky outcrop overlooking a narrow canyon where the Goran supply ship would pass. The tension was palpable as they hid behind boulders, hearts pounding in anticipation. Zara took a deep breath and turned to the group. "Remember, our goal is to be quick and efficient. We strike hard, gather what we need, and get out before they can retaliate. Stick to the plan, and we'll succeed." The sound of engines echoed in the distance, growing louder as the supply ship approached. Eric could feel the excitement building within him. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. "Positions," Zara whispered urgently, signaling for everyone to take their places. Eric and V crouched low, ready to spring into action. The Goran ship finally came into view, its metallic hull gleaming in the sunlight, completely unaware of the danger that lurked nearby. As the ship drew closer, Zara signaled for the distraction team to create noise. A series of loud bangs echoed from the canyon, causing the Goran guards to leap into action. The supply ship slowed, the crew scrambling to assess the situation. Eric exchanged a glance with V, that unspoken bond solidifying their resolve. "Now," Zara hissed, and they sprang into action. Eric and V dashed toward the supply ship, their movements quick and calculated. As they neared the entrance, Eric's heart raced. This was a chance to make a difference, to take back what had been stolen from V's people. They slipped inside, the interior dimly lit and filled with crates stacked high. "We need to find the control room," V whispered urgently, her eyes scanning their surroundings. "Right," Eric replied, adrenaline fueling his movements as they navigated the narrow corridors. The sounds of chaos outside filled the air, a reminder that time was of the essence. As they reached the control room, Vi quickly began to hack into the system, her fingers flying over the console. Eric kept a lookout, listening for any signs of approaching guards. "How long will this take?" he asked, trying to maintain a calm demeanor despite the rising tension. "Just a few more seconds," she replied, her focus unwavering. "I need to access their supply inventory and gather any intelligence I can find." Eric glanced over his shoulder, the sounds of chaos outside intensifying. He felt a surge of urgency. "We need to hurry, Vi. They'll be on to us soon." With a final flourish, Vi pulled up the information they needed. "Got it. Let's grab what we can carry and get out of here." They quickly loaded their bags with supplies, food, medical kits, and weapons, each item a small victory in their fight against the Goran. Just as they finished, the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Eric's heart raced as he looked at Vi. "We have to move now." They bolted out of the control room, retracing their steps as the footsteps grew closer. Eric could feel a tension in the air, each heartbeat a reminder that danger was hot on their heels. They raced toward the exit, adrenaline fueling their every move. As they burst outside, Eric spotted the distraction team still creating chaos, drawing attention away from the ship. "We have to get back to the others," he shouted to Vi. But just as they began to run, a group of Goran guards emerged from the shadows, blocking their path. "There they are," one of them shouted, raising a blaster. Vi instinctively stepped in front of Eric, her eyes fierce with determination. "Go," she yelled. "I'll hold them off." "No," Eric shouted, panic rising within him. "We can't leave you." "Just go," she insisted, her voice unwavering. "I'll catch up. Trust me." Eric hesitated, torn between loyalty and fear, but the sound of approaching footsteps from behind forced his hand. "Fine, but be careful." He turned and sprinted toward the chaos, praying that she would be safe. As he ran, his mind raced with fear for Vi's safety. He knew she was capable, but the Goran were ruthless. With every step, he could feel the weight of their mission bearing down on him, the hope of their cause hanging in the balance. He reached the distraction team, breathless and panicked. "We need to regroup," he shouted, scanning the area for Zara. "Vi is still inside." Zara's expression turned serious as she processed his words. "We need to get her out. What's the plan?" Eric's mind raced. "We create another distraction, something big enough to draw their fire. Then we go back for her." "All right," Zara nodded, her eyes glinting with determination. "You and I will set something up. The rest of you stay alert." As they began to formulate a plan, Eric couldn't shake the fear gnawing at his gut. He felt responsible for Vi's safety, knowing she had put her trust in him. He had to bring her back. Meanwhile, Vi fought against the Goran guards, her heart pounding as she took cover behind a crate. She could hear the commotion outside, but her mind was focused on survival. They would not take her down without a fight. The guards closed in, their blasters trained on her position. Vi took a deep breath, summoning the courage that had fueled her through countless struggles. She was not just fighting for herself, she was fighting for her people, for the hope that they could reclaim their freedom. With a swift movement, she tossed a smoke grenade toward the guards, the thick cloud enveloping them in confusion. "Now's my chance," she thought, sprinting toward the ship. But as she ran, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her, and her heart sank. No, not now. She turned to face her pursuers, determination hardening her resolve. She would not let them capture her. Back with Eric and a distraction team, they prepared to execute their plan. Eric's heart raced as they set up explosives near the ship, ready to create a diversion. "On my mark," he said, glancing at Zara. As the explosives were primed, Eric felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. "Now," he shouted, triggering the explosion. A deafening blast erupted, sending debris flying and causing chaos among the Goran guards. Go, now, Zara yelled, and they charged toward the ship. Eric's heart raced as he dashed through the smoke and confusion, scanning the area for V. V, he shouted, his voice hoarse with urgency. Where are you? Through the chaos, he spotted her emerging from the smoke, her expression fierce. Eric, she called, relief flooding her features. Let's go, he grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the ship. The guards were disoriented, but they wouldn't be for long. They climbed aboard, urgency driving their every move. Are we clear? V asked, her eyes wide with determination. Not yet, Eric replied, his heart pounding. We have to get out of here. As the ship rolled to life, they felt the vibrations through the floor, a reminder of their narrow escape. Zara and the others rushed inside, adrenaline pulsing through them. Get us out of here, Zara shouted to the pilot, who punched the controls, the engines roaring as they took off. With the base fading behind them, Eric's heart raced, a mix of relief and disbelief coursing through him. They had done it. They had gathered valuable supplies and escaped, but the battle was far from over. V leaned against the wall, catching her breath. We made it, she said, her voice a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. For now, Eric replied, the reality of their situation settling back in. But this was just a taste of what's to come. As they soared through the stars, Eric glanced around at the faces of his newfound allies, each one a warrior fighting for a cause larger than themselves. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but together they could stand against the darkness. Next time we'll be ready, he said, determination surging within him. We won't just survive, we'll fight back. V met his gaze, her eyes shining with gratitude and strength. I believe that. Together, we can create a future worth fighting for. As they ventured deeper into the cosmos, the stars shimmered with promise, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope could ignite the spark of rebellion. The unraveling threads. The journey back to their base felt surreal. The ship hummed with life as the crew shared stories of their escape, laughter mingling with relief. Eric sat beside V, their fingers entwined, as the reality of their mission settled in. They had struck a blow against the Goran, but the victory felt fragile. The universe was still vast and unforgiving, and the stakes were higher than ever. As the Nebula runner glided through the darkness of space, Zara gathered everyone for a debriefing in the main cabin. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, every member aware that this moment would shape their next steps. Zara stood at the front, her expression serious yet hopeful. We achieved something significant today, she began, scanning the faces of her comrades. We gathered supplies, intel, and most importantly, we proved to the Goran that we can fight back. The room erupted in a mix of cheers and applause, but Zara quickly raised a hand for silence. However, we cannot lose sight of the fact that this is just the beginning. The Goran will retaliate. They will not allow us to undermine their authority without consequences. Eric felt a knot tighten in his stomach. What's our next move? He asked, eager to shift the focus toward action. Zara nodded, appreciating his enthusiasm. We've gained valuable information from the supply ship about their patrol routes. Our next target will be a Goran communications relay, vital for their operations. If we can disrupt their communication, it will create chaos in their ranks. Disrupting their communication sounds risky, V interjected, her voice steady. They're bound to increase security around their key installations. We'll need a solid plan, Eric added, feeling the weight of responsibility. We can't afford to underestimate them again. Zara smiled, her eyes gleaming with determination. Exactly. That's why we'll need to gather more intel before we strike. Eric, VA, your experience on the ship gives you a unique perspective. I want you to lead the reconnaissance mission. VA looked at Eric, her gaze unwavering. We can do this, she said, her voice a mix of confidence and determination. Eric nodded, feeling a rush of adrenaline. We'll find a way to get in and out without being detected. As they discussed the details of their upcoming mission, Eric felt a deep sense of purpose swell within him. This wasn't just about survival. It was about fighting for freedom, for V's people, and for those who had been oppressed by the Goran. The meeting concluded with plans for their next steps, and as the crew dispersed, Eric and V lingered, exchanging glances filled with unspoken understanding. "We'll need to gather our gear and prepare for the mission," he said, his voice low. "Yes," V agreed, but her eyes held a glimmer of something deeper. "Eric, thank you for trusting me. It means more than you know." "Trust goes both ways," he replied, his heart racing. "We're in this together." As they made their way to the supply room, Eric couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. Every moment spent with V strengthened their bond, and he found himself wanting to know more about her past, her dreams, and the depths of her resilience. The supply room was a flurry of activity, with team members sorting through the newly acquired supplies. They gathered weapons, medical kits, and provisions for their mission. Eric was focused, ensuring that they had everything they needed. V worked beside him, her efficiency and skill evident as she expertly organized their equipment. "I can't believe how much we managed to gather in that raid," she remarked, her eyes shining with excitement. "Every bit counts." "It does," Eric replied, his mind racing. "And if we can keep striking at their supply lines, we'll weaken them. But we have to be careful. We can't afford to get too comfortable." VA paused, looking at him thoughtfully. "You've changed since we first met, Eric. You're not just a smuggler anymore. You're becoming a leader." Her words struck a chord within him. He had always been a lone wolf, but now he was part of something larger, a family united by a common cause. "I guess I am," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it's not just me. It's all of us. We're in this together." As they worked side by side, Eric felt a growing sense of camaraderie among the crew. They were more than just allies. They were a family forged through shared struggles and aspirations. With their supplies prepared, they settled in for a few hours of rest before embarking on their reconnaissance mission. Eric found himself lying awake in his quarters, thoughts swirling in his mind. He couldn't shake the image of V, her strength, her spirit, and he felt an undeniable pull toward her. When dawn broke, the team gathered once again in the main cabin. Zara outlined the plan in greater detail. "Our target is a Goran communications relay situated on a nearby moon. It's heavily fortified, but we have a window of opportunity while they change shifts. Eric and V will scout ahead, while the rest of us will remain in a safe distance, ready to assist if needed." The group nodded, their expressions serious. "Stay sharp," Zara added. "We can't afford to let our guard down." As they boarded the ship and set course for the moon, Eric felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The weight of their mission hung heavily in the air, but he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. V sat beside him in the cockpit, her presence a calming influence. "You okay?" she asked, noticing the tension in his shoulders. "Yeah, just thinking about what's coming," he replied, glancing at her. "We can't underestimate the Goran." Via nodded, her expression serious. "I know, but we've prepared for this. We'll stay focused, and we'll get the job done." As they approached the moon, its surface was a patchwork of rocky terrain and scattered foliage. Zara directed them to a hidden landing site, a secluded area shielded from the Goran patrols. Eric felt a thrill of anticipation as the ship touched down. "Let's move out," Zara commanded, her voice steady as the crew gathered their gear. Eric and V led the way, navigating the rugged terrain toward the communications relay. As they approached, Eric's heart raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation. They crept closer, their footsteps silent against the rocky ground. The relay tower loomed in the distance, a stark reminder of the Goran's oppressive presence. "There it is," Eric whispered, scanning the area for any signs of guards. "We need to find a way inside." Via nodded, her eyes sharp and focused. "There's an access point on the side of the building. If we can get in there, we can disable their communications without alerting the entire base." As they approached the access point, Eric's pulse quickened. The tension was palpable, every moment fraught with potential danger. V led the way, her movements fluid and calculated. They reached the access door, and V quickly got to work, her fingers dancing over the control panel. "Just a moment," she murmured, her focus unwavering. Eric kept watch, the sounds of distant chatter echoing in the air. "Hurry," he urged, his heart racing as he strained to hear any approaching footsteps. With a soft beep, the door slid open. "We're in," V whispered, stepping inside. Eric followed, the dim light illuminating the stark interior of the relay. They moved quickly, weaving through corridors lined with blinking consoles and equipment. "We need to find the main control room," V said, her eyes scanning for any signs of danger. As they navigated deeper into the facility, Eric felt a growing sense of urgency. They were running out of time, and the risk of being caught loomed large. "This way," he said, leading V down a narrow hallway. They finally reached the main control room, its walls lined with screens displaying various data feeds. V immediately began accessing the controls, her fingers flying over the keys. "I can disable their communications, but I need a few minutes," she said, her focus intense. "Just be quick," Eric replied, keeping a vigilant watch. The sound of footsteps echoed outside the door, and his heart raced. "We're not alone." V glanced up, her expression unflinching. "I'll work as fast as I can," she said, determination shining in her eyes. As she focused on the controls, Eric felt the tension mounting. The footsteps grew closer, and he could hear the sound of voices outside the door. "We need to hurry," he urged, his heart pounding. "I'm almost there," V replied, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Just a little longer." Eric positioned himself by the door, ready to confront whatever threat lay beyond. The voices grew louder, and he felt a surge of adrenaline. "They're coming." Just then, the door swung open, revealing a pair of Goran guards, their eyes widening in shock at the sight before them. "Intruders," one of them shouted, raising his blaster. Without hesitation, Eric lunged forward, tackling the nearest guard. The two men collided, and the guard let out a grunt of surprise. "VA, get the controls," Eric shouted as he grappled with the guard, wrestling for control of the blaster. V's hands flew over the console, her concentration unwavering. "I'm almost done," she called back, her voice steady despite the chaos. Eric managed to knock the guard to the ground, but the second guard quickly aimed his weapon. "Stop," he yelled, panic lacing his voice. "V," Eric shouted, his heart racing. With a final burst of determination, V hit the final command, and the screens flickered, plunging the room into darkness. "Communications disabled," she exclaimed, her voice filled with triumph. Eric seized the moment, tackling the second guard to the ground, disarming him with a swift motion. "We need to go," he urged, pulling V toward the exit. They dashed down the hallway, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The sound of alarms blared behind them, signaling that they had been discovered. "We need to get to the ship," Eric shouted, his mind racing with urgency. As they emerged from the building, chaos erupted outside. Goran soldiers rushed to respond to the alarm, their blasters drawn. Eric and V sprinted toward the ship, dodging blaster fire that whizzed past them. "Keep moving," V urged, her voice filled with determination. They reached the ship, and Eric quickly punched in the launch codes. "Get in," he shouted, ushering V aboard. As they climbed inside, Eric felt a surge of relief. "Let's go," he yelled to the pilot, who wasted no time powering up the engines. With the ship lifting off, Eric felt the tension begin to ease. They had completed their mission against all odds, but the reality of their situation lingered. V turned to him, her expression fierce and resolute. "We did it, Eric. We made a difference." He met her gaze, his heart swelling with pride. "We did it together," he replied, feeling a sense of connection that ran deeper than words. As they soared into the stars, Eric knew that their fight was far from over. The Goran would not rest, and neither would they. But now they had forged a bond that could not be broken, a bond built on trust, resilience, and the promise of a better future. Together, they would continue to challenge the darkness, igniting a spark of hope that would illuminate the path ahead. The universe was vast, but they were no longer alone in their struggle. They were a force to be reckoned with, and their journey had only just begun. Echoes of the past. The Nebula Runner glided through the dark expanse of space, leaving behind the chaos of the Goran communications relay. As the ship settled into a steady course, the crew began to breathe a little easier, the adrenaline of their escape slowly dissipating. But amidst the relief, a nagging tension lingered, an unspoken recognition that their fight against the Goran was only just beginning. Eric leaned against the cockpit wall, his gaze fixed on the starfield outside. V stood beside him, her eyes reflecting the shimmering lights of distant stars. "What now?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. "We need to regroup and assess our next steps," Eric replied, his mind racing with possibilities. "We gained valuable intel, but we can't underestimate the Goran. They'll come after us." Via nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You're right. We need to plan our next move carefully. But I can't help but feel that we've awakened something by disrupting their communications. They won't just sit back and allow us to continue." Zara entered the cockpit, her demeanor more relaxed but still serious. "I overheard the comms during our escape. The Goran are already mobilizing. They're not taking our raid lightly," she said, her tone grave. "We need to prepare for the fallout." Eric exchanged glances with V, sensing the weight of Zara's words. "What do you suggest?" Eric asked, eager for direction. "We need to build alliances," Zara said, her eyes alight with determination. "There are other factions out there, disenfranchised groups who have suffered at the hands of the Goran. If we can unite them, we could form a coalition strong enough to fight back." V's interest piqued. "Do you have any contacts in mind?" "Actually, yes. There's a group of rebel miners on the planet Vespera," Zara explained. "They've been working underground for years, trying to disrupt Goran operations. If we can convince them to join us, it could significantly strengthen our position." Eric's heart raced at the prospect. "Let's get there as soon as we can," he urged. "We need all the help we can get." Zara nodded, her resolve clear. "Prepare the ship for departure. We'll set a course for Vespera." As the crew sprang into action, Eric and V shared a quiet moment amidst the hustle. "Are you ready for this?" Eric asked, his voice low. "I am," V replied, her gaze steady. "I've seen too many suffer at the hands of the Goran. It's time to stand up for what's right." With a newfound sense of purpose, the crew worked swiftly to prepare the Nebula Runner for the journey to Vespera. Eric felt a thrill of anticipation, mixed with the weight of responsibility. They were embarking on a mission that could change everything. After a short flight through the star-speckled void, they arrived at Vespera, a planet marked by rugged mountains and dark caves. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the remnants of past conflicts. As they descended, Eric couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into a hornet's nest. "Keep your guard up," Zara warned as they touched down in a secluded clearing. "This place has seen its fair share of trouble." Once they disembarked, they were met by a small group of miners, their faces etched with wariness. The leader, a tall woman with steel-gray hair and piercing blue eyes, stepped forward. "What brings you to Vespera?" she demanded, her voice commanding. Zara took a step forward, her tone respectful but firm. "We're here to talk about the Goran and how we can fight back. We need allies in this struggle." The leader's gaze flickered between the crew members. "You're the ones who disrupted their communications." "That was us," Eric admitted, feeling the weight of their actions. "And we know the Goran won't take it lightly. We need your help to make a stand." The leader considered this for a moment, her expression contemplative. "Many of my people have lost everything to the Goran, but trust doesn't come easily. Why should we risk our lives for your cause? We've seen the atrocities they commit, V interjected, her voice steady. Every day, they enslave, exploit, and destroy. If we band together, we can disrupt their operations and reclaim our freedom. The leader's gaze softened slightly, her steel blue eyes reflecting a flicker of hope. It won't be easy. The Goran are ruthless, and we have lost too many already. Zara stepped forward, her voice resolute. We can provide you with resources, intelligence, and support. Together, we can make a difference. But we need to act quickly before the Goran retaliate. The leader studied them for a long moment, weighing their words. Very well, I'll call a meeting with the other miners. But know this, if you betray our trust, there will be consequences. Understood, Eric replied, his heart pounding. They were on the precipice of something greater, but he knew that trust was a fragile thing. As the leader gathered her people, Eric and his crew prepared for the meeting. They set up a makeshift strategy room in one of the abandoned buildings nearby, spreading out maps and intel from their recent raid. The miners began to trickle in, their expressions a mix of skepticism and curiosity. The atmosphere was thick with tension as Zara laid out their plan. Our objective is simple: disrupt Goran supply lines, weaken their control, and liberate those under their oppression. But we need your expertise. You know the terrain, the operations, and the people. One of the miners, a burly man with a rugged face, crossed his arms. What's in it for us? We've lost everything fighting against the Goran. Why should we risk more? Because together, we can be stronger, Eric said, stepping forward. I know how powerful the Goran can be. I've seen what they do to those who resist. But we can fight back, and we can win if we stand united. The group murmured among themselves, the tension slowly shifting. V stood beside Eric, her presence a steady force. Every life we save is worth the risk. The Goran are not invincible. They can be defeated. As the discussions continued, Eric felt a surge of hope. The miners began to share their own stories, recounting their struggles against the Goran, and the desire for freedom burned brighter within the room. Finally, the leader spoke again, her voice resolute. If we're going to do this, we need to act quickly. We have a stockpile of supplies hidden in the caves. We can use them to bolster our efforts, but we must be cautious. Zara nodded, her eyes shining with determination. We'll provide support and plan our first operation together. This is our chance to send a message to the Goran. As the meeting concluded, Eric felt a sense of camaraderie growing among them. They were no longer just a ragtag crew. They were part of something larger, an alliance forged in the fires of resistance. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly to coordinate their efforts. Eric and V spent hours scouting the area, mapping out Goran patrol routes, while the miners prepared their supplies. The atmosphere was electric with determination, and the tension from before began to dissipate, replaced by a shared sense of purpose. But beneath the surface, Eric sensed the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. They were building something powerful, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking a tightrope. One misstep could lead to disaster. As they planned their first operation, Eric found himself reflecting on his journey, how far he had come from the smuggler who only cared about himself. Now he was fighting for a cause larger than his own, and it terrified him. He had never been one to rely on others, but now he was part of a family, a coalition that depended on each other. One evening, after a long day of strategizing, Eric found himself alone in a quiet corner of the mining base. He stared at the stars outside, contemplating the enormity of their mission. V joined him, her presence a welcome comfort. Thinking too much? She asked softly, leaning against the wall beside him. Maybe, he admitted with a small smile. Just trying to wrap my head around all this. We're on the verge of something big, but it feels fragile. Via nodded, her expression understanding. It is fragile, but that's what makes it powerful. We're fighting for something real. For freedom, for hope. Yeah, Eric said, his heart swelling with pride. But I just don't want to let anyone down. You won't, V reassured him, her gaze unwavering. You've already proven your strength by taking this leap. You've shown everyone what's possible. Eric looked at her, feeling a connection that ran deeper than words. I couldn't have done any of this without you. She smiled, a warmth spreading between them. And you've inspired me, Eric. Together, we're stronger. As they stood side by side, gazing out at the vastness of the universe, Eric felt a sense of determination settling within him. They were embarking on a journey filled with uncertainty, but he knew they would face it together. The next day, the coalition gathered for their first operation, a mix of miners and crew members brimming with anticipation. Zara stood at the front, outlining their strategy with precision and clarity. Today, we will target a Goran supply convoy, she explained. We'll use the element of surprise to our advantage. Our goal is to disrupt their operations and send a message that we will not be silenced. As they geared up, Eric's heart raced with excitement and fear. He looked over at Vey, who was preparing her gear with a focused determination. She caught his eye and smiled, an unspoken assurance passing between them. Are you ready? He asked, his voice low. Ready as I'll ever be, she replied, her confidence infectious. As they set out on their mission, Eric felt a surge of adrenaline. They were no longer just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for the lives of many. With each step, they were forging a new path, and he was determined to see it through. The journey to intercept the convoy was tense, but the sense of purpose drove them forward. They moved stealthily through the rugged terrain, their hearts pounding in unison. Eric couldn't shake the feeling that this was a turning point, a moment that would define not just their struggle, but their very lives. As they reached their vantage point, the sound of the approaching convoy echoed through the mountains. Eric glanced at V, their eyes locking in a moment of shared resolve. They were ready to take their stand. With a deep breath, Zara signaled the group, "Let's show them what we're made of." As they launched their attack, Eric felt a surge of hope. They were about to challenge the Goran together, and there was no turning back now. The echoes of the past had led them here, and they were ready to create a future filled with possibility.